Good morning, everyone. This is Sean Fraser from IWI. I'd like to thank everybody for joining our webinar for Become a Data-Driven Organization with Sage Alerts and Workflow. This is a very good module. I'm not going to get too much into it, as Don Farber will go into the depth of it, but this is a module I think anybody that's using some Sage products should be using. So what we're going to do, I'm hoping everybody can see our screen. We have our chat box open. If you're having any issues with sound or can't see, please let us know via chat. I'm going to ask you to put all your questions in chat, and then we'll pass them off to Don at the end of this webinar. So just a brief little introduction before I pass this off. So Don Farber is a co-founder of the Sage Alerts and Workflow. It's also called Knowledge Sync technology. He has over 30 years in the software industry. Don is a frequent speaker at industry events, such very topics of operational business intelligence, cost-effective compliance, how to avoid support rep burnout. For the past 20 years, Don's focus has been on the area of business activity monitoring, also known as BAM, and the automated detection of and response to critical time-sensitive business condition. Just so everybody knows, Don's located outside Seattle, Washington. So Don, I appreciate you taking the time to co-produce this webinar, and I'll pass it off to yourself at this time.
Thank you very much, Sean, and just want to confirm that you can hear my voice coming through loud and clear.
Yes, we're good. Yes, see your screen.
Fantastic, thank you. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for spending some time with me today to learn about this concept of the data-driven organization. So just to give you a little bit of an agenda, we're going to start off with a business level overview of what it means to be a data-driven organization. We'll explore a new term called operational business intelligence. You heard Sean refer to it just a couple moments ago. So the business level discussion will take about 18 or so minutes. Then we'll jump into a technology that supports a data-driven initiative. So you'll have a look at that live. And then we'll jump back into the business presentation for just a couple more minutes. We'll talk about licensing and pricing, and as Sean mentioned, we'll be sure to leave time at the end for any Q&A. If you do have a couple seconds of silence coming from my side of the phone, don't worry, I haven't gone anywhere. That's just me grabbing a quick sip of water. And as Sean mentioned, if you do have any questions that occur to you during the course of the presentation, please do type them into the chat field, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of today's session. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So we're going to start out by asking the obvious question, which is, well, why should an organization become data-driven? Well, I'm going to kind of jump to the conclusion right away and share with you some results that real clients have seen by virtue of adopting a data-driven initiative within their organizations. On the accounts receivable side, we've seen organizations who have reduced their clients' time to pay by up to 30%. We've seen organizations being able to identify and avoid supplier price increases, reduce late shipments, to increase their monthly accounts receivable collections by an average of $11,000. And finally, automating business processes to the tune of basically 100 hours of staff time every month. So hopefully those 5 examples of what clients, real life clients, have seen by virtue of adopting a data-driven initiative, hopefully that's enough to pique your interest. And so with that, let's now dig into this a little bit deeper. So what exactly do we mean by data-driven? How is it related to this concept of business intelligence, or BI? Well, a data-driven organization is one that uses the details of their current and past business activities to help them increase both their profitability and the productivity of their business. Now, being data-driven, what it really means is that an organization expands their visibility into their business data in real time. And so this allows organizations to make better business decisions and to make them faster and to make those decisions based upon facts rather than on assumptions or guesswork. Now, in the past, data-driven initiatives have always been the exclusive domain of managers, executives, and C-level staff. And it's because these are the folks traditionally within an organization who have been given the job of looking at key performance indicators and other metrics in order to determine the best possible business decisions and directions for the future of their business. Now, these people within an organization, the managers, executives, C-level staff here that we're talking about, these are the folks who have been given the tools, typically business intelligence, slice and dice technologies, as well as the time to accomplish their research. And yet, when we consider this concept of data-driven initiatives being the exclusive domain of managers and executives, there's something that's rather nagging about it. And what's nagging is the fact that isn't it really true that the big picture success of an organization and those decisions that are reached by executives and managers are really themselves based upon the little pictures of success that are accomplished every day by non-managerial staff, the worker bees within an organization. And so what we're driving at here is the concept that a data-driven approach to business should not be the exclusive domain of managers and executives. It should be an approach that is applied to all members of an organization. So we can first make the following suggestion. What if we took all of the tools, the BI slice and dice tools that managers and executives have, and give them to every member of our staff so that everyone has access to these BI tools and can postulate what-if conditions? Well, I think the resounding answer to that proposal is, heck no. Our workers within an organization, we don't have the time to give them access to what-if tools, to slice and dice tools. They've got their everyday tasks. So what we're leading to here is the concept that we need a different type of data and a different type of data-driven initiatives to fit our worker bees than are used by our managers and executives. Different people need different types of business intelligence. And what we need to do is we need to look at an organization and match the right kind of intelligence to the right kind of people, and that brings us back to this concept of how business intelligence is used. Managers, executives, C-level staff, they use BI solutions that allow them to do two things. Number one, analyze business activities to detect trends, spot anomalies, and uncover and address organizational inefficiencies. These same managers and executives use BI tools to postulate what-if scenarios. What if we focused more on this product, on that product? What if we allocated resources from this department and put them towards that effort? So these are exactly what managers and executives need in the terms of business intelligence tools. However, these tools are not what we want to give to our operational staff, to those worker bees, as I call them. Non-managerial staff need access to BI tools that allow them to complete their daily tasks more easily, more quickly, and more intelligently than before. And as a result of that, what our non-managerial staff need is a BI tool that gives them greater visibility into their individual time-sensitive tasks, and they need access to a BI technology that lessens their workload. How? By automating repetitive tasks that they used to do manually. We're going to drill down into both of these. What this is, this type of business intelligence for the masses, business intelligence for my non-managerial staff, is referred to as operational business intelligence. We can think of business intelligence for managers and executives as strategic business intelligence, but for the rest of us, for the folks in the trenches, we need operational business intelligence. And that OBI, as if we need yet another acronym, there it is, that actually gives us the two things that the folks in the trenches need: greater visibility. Tell me what's happened in business that applies to me. Tell me what I need to do to complete my part in that process, and deliver that information to me when I need it and how I need it. And secondly, automating tasks that used to be done manually. For example, when a new sales order is placed, we know that we want to generate an order confirmation and email it to the customer and maybe even carbon copy the sales rep. If we know that, let's automate it. Let's get it out of being a manual task that I need to perform. I know that if a stock item is running low, If it's reached or is approaching its reorder level, we want to generate a purchase order, deliver that purchase order to the corresponding vendor. Let's automate that process. And even other things, such as every Monday morning at 9 a.m., automatically deliver to me a list of those jobs that require my attention that have to start this week. So let's consider a very typical business scenario that's encountered, by operational staff within an organization. Late paying customers. Sad to say, we've all got them. Sometimes we sell products and services and our customers fail to pay on time. So let me ask you, if that happens or when that happens to your organization, what do you do? First of all, do you have certain reports or analytics that you run that identify delinquent clients? Once you find that you have delinquent clients, do you need to tell certain people about that? Do you need to notify the customer's account manager, your CFO or accounting department? Do you need to deliver some kind of documents? Heck, if a customer's past due, let's resend them a copy of that overdue invoice or a statement. Do you need to do additional research? Well, if a customer's past due, we probably want to run an AR aging report for that client and see what their receivables picture looks like as a whole. And finally, if a customer is past due, maybe we need to take some additional action. We need to go into Sage 300 and put that customer on credit hold, so no additional purchases are allowed for them. Maybe we need to change their payment terms to require that they pay in advance of their future purchases. Now, if you answered yes to any of these questions in terms of acts or actions that you take when a client becomes delinquent, I would now ask you to ask yourself the following. Whose job is it within your organization to run those reports that detect delinquent customers? How soon are those reports run and those delinquent customers detected? Whose job is it to notify the appropriate people? Whose job is it to generate the needed documents, the invoice, the statement, and deliver them to the appropriate people? Whose job is it to do the additional research to run that AR aging report? And whose job is it to decide whether or not a delinquent customer needs to be put on credit hold and then actually go into Sage 300 and make that change to the client's account? The sad truth is that for most businesses today, the who, in terms of who does these tasks, is typically yourself and your colleagues. How you do this right now, for the most part, manually. And how soon this gets done is very often really not as soon as we'd like it to happen. As soon as a customer becomes delinquent, we want to take those actions and not wait days or a week or more to do these things. So, in order to be as competitive as possible, as productive as possible, the processes of detection and response within an organization must be automated. And that's exactly what an operational business intelligence technology does. It automatically detects important business conditions and activities within Sage 300, and as you'll see, in related applications as well. It automatically notifies the appropriate people, automatically generates and delivers the required documents. It automatically triggers the additional research and delivers that to the appropriate people. And finally, it automatically updates your applications, such as putting a past due customer on credit hold within Sage 300 to make sure that your people and your systems are in sync. So you've got now a theoretical construct of a operational business intelligence technology. Now let me show you how that is manifest in a solution like Sage Alerts and Workflow. Alerts and Workflow begins by monitoring your Sage 300 system for any business conditions that are important to you. Out of the box, Sage Alerts and Workflow ships with roughly 55 pre-configured business conditions, such as low inventory, customers who are delinquent in paying for their purchases, clients who have stopped buying or have changed their buying habits, gross profit falling too low. It is safe to say any business condition that's important to your organization can be monitored, identified, and responded to by Alerts and Workflow. And do note the yellow down at the bottom right of the current slide. Although we're going to talk today about what Alerts and Workflow can do for Sage 300, please know that Alerts and Workflow can do the same kinds of things for all of your other business applications as well. Sage CRM, or perhaps even non-Sage applications, human resource applications, quote management applications, etc. Secondly, alerts and workflow sends alerts to the appropriate people about the business conditions that have occurred. Now, when I say alerts, most people think email, but I like to point out that email is just one of the multiple methods by which alerts and workflow can notify people. You know, if someone's on the road, the best way to notify them would be a text message to their cell phone or mobile device. And although email is good, to my thinking, it's not actually as good as a dynamic web dashboard, which is actually what you're looking at here. Can you imagine someone down in shipping who has a web page up that says, here's a list of all of the orders that have to go out today? Or some folks up in accounting who have a window up that says, here's a list of all of the invoices that are past due or perhaps are coming due for payment this week. Now, as I mentioned before, part of the chore of an operational business intelligence system is to automatically generate and deliver relevant forms and documents. The most common use of alerts and workflow is the following. When a new sales order is placed in Sage 300, I want alerts and workflow to generate an invoice in PDF format, automatically email that invoice or order confirmation to the customer, and carbon copy the customer's sales rep. That's what we're looking at right here. So again, think of all of your standard forms and documents, invoices, statements, picking lists, dunning notices, purchase orders, quotes. Those can all be automatically generated and delivered by alerts and workflow. The additional analytics that I spoke of, if a client is past due, maybe we want to generate that AR aging report for that client and send that report to that client's sales rep or account manager. All of your existing reports, whether it's Crystal reports, Sage Intelligence reports, Sage Enterprise Intelligence reports, etc., can be automatically generated and delivered by alerts and workflow. And I just want to touch upon the very first checked item on the current slide, where it refers to both scheduled and triggered reports. You can probably imagine what a scheduled report is. Maybe it's a daily stock status report. However, for my money, what's even more exciting are triggered reports, because a report is only as good as its timeliness. If something happens on a Monday, but your report is not scheduled to run until Friday, well, that 4 or 5 days may be too long to wait. So with alerts and workflow, you can have something called triggered reports. So you can say things like, if a stock item drops to below its stock minimum, at the time that happens, I want alerts and workflow to generate, whether it's a stock status report or a reorder report for that item, and deliver that report to our purchasing manager. So triggered reports, reports that get generated only when and if the corresponding business conditions exist. And when it comes to reports, it really is true that sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So part of alerts and workflow is a graphic alerting module. And we'll take a look at that when we jump into the application itself. So if we have an alert that notifies a sales rep that one of their customers has stopped buying or has changed their buying habits, probably the most useful alert that we could send to that salesperson would be a nice looking bar or line chart that shows this particular customer's sales over the last 3, 6, or 9 months. And the final component to alerts and workflow, and the reason that it's called alerts and workflow, and not just Sage Alerts, is that alerts and workflow has the ability to go back into Sage 300 as well as into other applications and actually add or update information there. As we've said, if a client is past due and paying for their invoices, maybe we want that client to be automatically placed on credit hold or have their payment terms changed. If a client does get placed on credit hold within Sage 300, maybe we want alerts and workflow to take some financial details about that client and take those details and write them into a CRM database, such as Sage CRM, Microsoft CRM, or other such solutions. So there you have the alerts and workflow technology in terms of the components that it contains, starting with monitoring conditions in Sage 300 and elsewhere, triggering alerts, the generation and delivery of forms, documents, reports, and charts, and finally updating Sage 300 and related applications as needed. So now you've got an idea for the components of Sage Alerts and Workflow, and what I'd like to do next is actually show you that solution. So let me jump into Sage Alerts and Workflow and start off by making a couple of general comments about this technology. Number one, it's a server-based application. That means it's typically installed on just one machine within your IT environment. It does not need to be on a dedicated server. You could put it on your Sage 300 server, on your SQL server, your Exchange server, or even run it on a workstation, which is what I'm demoing it to you from today. Alerts and Workflow runs under any Windows-based operating system, so that makes that a mercifully brief conversation. And the way Alerts and Workflow operates, I always like to use the analogy of a smoke detector for your Sage 300 and related data. Because in Alerts and Workflow, you tell it what business conditions you want it to look for, and for each of these conditions, you tell it how often you want it to check for those conditions, once a day, once a week, every hour, every few minutes, or even continuously. And then you turn Alerts and Workflow on. It runs as a Windows service in a lights-out processing environment. Again, like a smoke detector. Once you install it, put that battery in, and then put the cover back on it, you walk away from it. And like a smoke detector, Alerts and Workflow just sits out there constantly monitoring your Sage 300 and related data sets for the business conditions that are important to you. And if and when those conditions occur, Alerts and Workflow triggers the corresponding actions. Now, what you've just seen me do is expand the accounts receivable branch of the event pack, as we call it, for Sage 300. The event pack is a collection of pre-configured events or business scenarios that Alerts and Workflow can use with Sage 300. As I mentioned previously, we ship about 55 or so pre-configured business conditions. You can use those, and you can add an unlimited number of additional events to the system. Now, I just want to give you an idea for some of the different types of business conditions just within the AR module within Sage 300. Everything from looking at customers who've had their credit limit or credit status changed, invoices that are coming due or past due, a change to a customer's payment terms. Again, it's safe to say any business condition you can imagine can be monitored and responded to by Alerts and Workflow. You'll notice also in my display here, I'm having Alerts and Workflow not only monitor a number of different modules within Sage 300, I'm having it do some automated trend analysis, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. I'm having Alerts and Workflow monitor data in my CRM app, my HR app, both of which also happen to be from Sage. I'm also having Alerts and Workflow monitor conditions between Sage 300 and Sage CRM. And by the way, that could be between Sage 300 and Microsoft CRM or Sugar CRM or Salesforce.com. Alerts and Workflow has the ability not only to monitor conditions within an application, but between any two or more applications. But let me give you an idea for how an event is constructed in Alerts and Workflow, and for that, I'm going to go back to accounts receivable because the scenario I gave earlier of invoices that are coming due or overdue, that's a pretty common scenario that a lot of clients use Alerts and Workflow for. So let's pick one from this list. Let's go to invoices that are coming due within the next 7 days. After all, if we know that invoices are coming due, probably be a nice thing to send a copy of that invoice to the corresponding customer and say something like, hey, this invoice is coming due this week, please remit payment, and here's how you can do so. All right. So every event has up to 5 components associated with it, and you can see those 5 here. The first of which is telling me whether or not the current event is active and how often is Alerts and Workflow checking for this event's conditions. If we cursor over this branch, we'll see that this event is running every day at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, every event has its own schedule. And in this particular case, I know that in truth, this event is not running 7 days a week at 9 a.m. It's actually running only on weekdays. So you have the ability to really closely control exactly when an event runs. If no one's going to be in an office on Saturdays or Sundays, there's probably no reason to send an alert during that time. Likewise, you can tell alerts in workflow to not send alerts on holidays. You can tell it to send alerts only during work hours, and even more flexibility than that. But let's go down to the second component of an event referred to as its query. This is the underlying business condition that we want alerts in workflow to look for. Now you'll notice in this particular branch, we have alerts that are going out about invoices coming due in 30 days, 14 days, and 7 days. And that triggering threshold, that number of days, is completely up to you and very easily modified. In alerts and workflow, everything is based upon user authorization. So only the folks you deem as needing access to perform certain functions in the application will be able to do things like specify what that number of days is. Invoices coming due within 7 days, 10 days, 3 days, or maybe even 0 days for invoices that are coming due today. Now, whenever I start talking about the triggering condition, here referred to as the query, I often get asked, Don, how easy or difficult is it for me as a non-technical person to customize this query? For example, we have certain customers, we know they always pay late, and we know that they always pay late, so can I exclude them from the logic of this particular query? Well, the answer to that question is as follows. To create or customize queries, you don't have to be a programmer. You're not writing SQL syntax or VB script or anything like that. But what you do need is a good, thorough understanding of, in this case, the Sage 300 database schema. In plain English, you need to know what data sits where. If you've ever written a report for Sage 300, you have that expertise. And if you don't have that expertise, I guarantee you that the good folks at IWI absolutely do, and they probably know the Sage 300 database schema in their sleep. I do want to take you on a quick tour of the Query Designer, however, just to show you how relatively easy it is for you to control the triggering conditions. In this particular case, we're having alerts in workflow retrieve a number of fields of data about, in this case, invoices that are coming due, such as the amount of an invoice's discount, the amount due, who the sales rep is, the date that an invoice is due, etc. You can have a lot of fun here. For example, if we take a look at the amount of the invoice, maybe we want to total up all of the overdue invoices or all of the coming due invoices for a customer, Perhaps we want to derive the average amount due per customer. So this is all done through options that you can select from this wizard. You can create calculations. So there's a button here to add a calculated column. If you wanted to calculate the number of days until an invoice is due, we can actually just go down in this list and look for difference in days between two dates, and Alerts and Workflow will walk me through the calculation to calculate the number of days until an invoice is due. I'm going to jump ahead a couple of tabs to the Filters tab. Here's where I'm able to specify the specific conditions that I want Alerts and Workflow to look for. For one thing, I need to make sure that the amount that is due on an invoice is greater than $0. Everything here is available from drop-down lists in plain English. You don't have to, again, know any kind of SQL syntax or code. You can specify Boolean logic and or conditions. And very importantly, down at the bottom right of this tab, there's a button called If Column Values Have Changed. If you've ever been working in Sage 300 and have run across a field that has been changed, such as an invoice's due date, a customer's credit limit, or payment terms, and thought to yourself, gosh, I wish I knew who changed that field, when it was changed, and what it was changed from and to. Well, in this case, you can actually tell Alerts and Workflow to audit the value of any field anywhere in Sage 300. And if and when a field's value is changed, Alerts and Workflow will capture that change. It'll capture both the old value and the new value of any fields that were changed. Now, in truth, behind the scenes, Alerts and Workflow is executing a fairly sophisticated procedure to come up with a list of those invoices that are coming due within a certain number of days. I'll show you what's under the hood. It's some programming code here. The nice thing is that all of this lovely SQL select syntax You don't have to know how to write that. Alerts and Workflow generates all this stuff for you based upon the selections that you've made in the preceding tabs. So let's take a look and see if we have any invoices that are coming due within 7 days. And in fact, we do. So we can preview the results of a query, make sure it's retrieving the appropriate records, and then we can continue by looking at the remainder of this event. So we've identified the triggering conditions, invoices that are coming due within 7 days. So the next step is to specify what kind of alerts do we want to send out about those invoices coming due. Well, in truth, most events do not have all of these different alert delivery methods configured, but I wanted to just give you a sense for the variety of ways in which Alerts and Workflow can notify people, whether it's via email or fax or instant message or dynamic web dashboard. All of these are options for you. They all come with the application. Let's just go into our instant message alert for right now. Let's modify that alert message. Again, everything here is based upon authorizations, so I have been specially designated with the ability to modify this component of an event. So we see that our instant message here is pretty brief. It's telling us that a certain invoice in the amount of X dollars is due on a certain date. Now, maybe we want to add the actual date of the invoice itself. So let's just add in dated. Let's find our invoice date field. And let's see, date of invoice. We'll just double click on that and drop that into our alert message. So creating and modifying alerts is as simple as that. When it comes to email alerts, you have a choice between plain text and HTML format. Do you have to know how to write HTML? Absolutely not. We provide a library of HTML formats to choose from. Now, if we take a look at this list of deliverables, you'll see we also have both a report and a chart associated with this event. So let's go to our Reports tab. We already discussed that if we're having an invoice or multiple invoices that are coming due for payment in the next 7 days, the best thing for us to do would be to generate the invoices for those appropriate records and deliver them to the corresponding customers. So this is our Sage 300 invoice form. We're telling Alerts and Workflow that we want that form, that document, to be generated in PDF format. All of the other traditional formats that you use are available here, such as HTML, MS Word, Excel, etc. Alerts and Workflow is going to automatically pass into that report each invoice that is coming due this week, and we'll see in just a couple of minutes how that invoice gets delivered to the corresponding customer. But before we do so, let's take a look at the chart that's associated with this event. So let's go in and edit this chart. As you can see, this is a bar chart. The purpose of this chart, not to be sent to our customers in this case, but sent to our sales force, is totaling the amount of invoices due per sales rep. We've structured this as a bar chart, but we do have other chart formats to choose from, including these multi-charts, which are a favorite of mine. They allow you to do comparative performance charts. So sales of one sales rep versus other reps within your department. But let's keep this the way this is for right now. Let's have a look at this chart. It should show us the total due for all outstanding invoices totaled by sales rep, and we can see that both Bill and Don have by far the most revenue coming due from their clients. Now, these charts and graphs, these can be attached to emails. They can be embedded right within the body of an email. They can be posted to a web-based dashboard or even FTP'd to a recipient's preferred location. Last but not least, when it comes to the alert messages that are being generated and delivered, we're even having Alerts and Workflow pick up a Microsoft Word document and attach it to the outgoing email. That document instructs our customers on how to pay for their invoices using an online bill payment method. So let's drop down another branch to our subscribers. Subscribers in Alerts and Workflow are the people to whom the alerts are going to be delivered. And this event has 4. Starting off with the first 2, we're going to notify everyone in our finance group, and we're also going to notify myself. Now, as you can see with Alerts and Workflow, you can choose to notify just via one method, such as email, or you can choose to notify people via multiple methods. Our finance group here are being notified via both email and instant message. I sometimes like to semi-jokingly say you can really annoy the heck out of someone with this application if you put your mind to it, but sometimes, like when it comes to collecting invoices, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to keep on touching someone until they pay you what's due. Now, the last two alert recipients here are referred to as dynamic alert recipients. And to me, these are the two most important alert recipients or subscribers for this event. After all, if we've got customers with invoices coming due in the next week, the most logical people for me to send the alerts to are the customer themselves, as well as their sales rep. And these are referred to as dynamic recipients because, of course, they're going to change based upon which invoices are coming due over the next 7 days. And one last thing I want to share here about alerts and workflow. If I cursor over my subscription record, you'll see that alerts and workflow is showing a Gmail email address. Now, that is in fact my secondary email address. And what I mean by that is that if I'm going to receive an alert Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., alerts and workflow is going to notify me at my primary or work email address. But if an alert needs to get delivered to me on Saturdays, on Sundays, or at 2 in the morning, alerts and workflow is actually going to deliver that alert to a secondary alert message, which in this case is my Gmail account. The final component of an event are its workflow actions. Now, this is where alerts and workflow has the ability to write data back into Sage 300. It can put a customer on hold. It can change a customer's payment terms. Now, because this Actions tab allows data within applications to be updated or have data added to them, this branch is covered under an additional layer of security. Because obviously when it comes to writing data back into a database, you need to be doubly sure that only the appropriate people, the people with the appropriate skill set, can specify these actions. Now, these actions can be a variety, everything from, well, maybe I have a collections agency, and at the end of every week, they've asked me to create a comma-separated file of all invoices that are coming due this week or this month. So that's what this first option is here. And then there are a number of programmatical APIs, or application programming interfaces, that we have available from here. Everything from alerts and workflow being able to go directly into Sage 300 and add records, update records. Alerts and workflow can run custom programs. It actually includes an embedded Visual Basic scripting engine. And in our upcoming release, version 10, due out in just a couple of months, as it just entered beta test, we will be adding one very important option to the list, and that's the ability for alerts and workflow to make web service calls via a RESTful web API. All right. So you've got an idea for how alerts and workflow works, how an event is configured. Before we jump back into the PowerPoint for just a few last slides, I just want to show you how sophisticated you can get with your use of alerts and workflow. Earlier on, I talked about automated trend analysis. So I just want to take a very brief moment to show you just one example of that. We've got an event here that is scheduled to run on the first day of every month at 9 o'clock in the morning. What does this event do? Well, it starts out by looking to see what each customer purchased for the month just ended. Then alerts and workflow in this case goes back an additional 6 months for each customer to look at their sales history. Why? Because we want alerts and workflow to determine the average monthly sale amount per customer based upon that previous 6 months of activity. And then as a fourth and final step, we want alerts and workflow to compare for each customer what they purchased last month versus their average monthly purchase, and if their last month's sales represent a decrease of at least 30% over their average month, well, in that case, we want alerts and workflow to deliver an email alert, in this case, to the corresponding sales rep, and let's take a quick look at that email alert. So the alert message is going to say, hello, salesperson. This customer of yours has placed orders for the previous month to date that represents a decrease of at least 30% over their average month. And we're showing just 4 fields of data here. For each customer, what they purchased last month, what their average monthly purchases is based upon the preceding 6 months of activity, and then the decrease. The decrease, or the drop in sales, represented both as a dollar amount as well as a percentage. I love the idea of a salesperson coming into the office on the first day of every month and to have waiting for them in their email box 1 or more emails to tell them about any customers of theirs who have significantly changed their buying habits. So again, just to give you an idea of how sophisticated, how powerful alerts and workflow can be in terms of detecting critical business conditions and activities. Okay, so let's jump back in here and simply finish with a few final slides. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about as yet is licensing and pricing. So let's do that now. Let's start off with the simplest of scenarios. Let's say that you wish to use alerts and workflow to monitor your Sage 300 system for an unlimited number of business conditions. And by the way, that also includes an unlimited number of companies in Sage 300 if you're in a multi-company environment. You want to send alerts to your staff, your clients, your vendors, and suppliers. You want those alerts to be delivered via all of the methods I mentioned previously, email, web, dashboard, etc. And you also want the ability to have alerts and workflow go back into Sage 300 and actually add or update information as needed. Now you have 2 choices. You can either purchase alerts and workflow either as a perpetual license or as a subscription license. Perpetually, you'd be looking at a one-time license cost, again, one-time license cost of just under $3,300. And with that, roughly 20%, $650 for annual maintenance and support. Or your other option is to go the subscription route, and that is $260 a month, which is inclusive of maintenance and support. Please note, there is no per user licensing fee. So it doesn't matter how many Sage 300 licenses you have, doesn't matter how many employees you have within your organization, how many events you wish to monitor, how many alerts you wish to send. It is simply licensed according to the number of applications you wish it to monitor. So this $32.95 we would refer to as a one connection license because alerts and workflow is monitoring a single application, Sage 300. However, you might also have Sage CRM or simply any CRM application, and you think, well, I'd like to use alerts and workflow to monitor it as well. How much extra would it cost to monitor one additional application? As you can see at the bottom of the slide, it's an additional $1,799. That's a one-time fee. To that also is roughly 20% for annual maintenance and support. Twice that amount lets you monitor 2 additional applications for a grand total of 3 applications being monitored, and 3 times that, or just under $5,400 in additional to the above fee, gives you what's called the unlimited application or unlimited connection license, enabling you to use alerts and workflow to monitor every single business application you own today or ever will own. And by the way, that also covers or includes using alerts and workflow to monitor an unlimited quantity of incoming email, which is kind of a cool use of alerts and workflow. So just to summarize some of the business benefits of alerts and workflow, it integrates with all of your business applications. Of course, we've been focusing on Sage 300, but it is by no means limited to monitoring data just in Sage 300. Alerts and workflow is what's referred to as a zero latency technology. The concept of data latency is the amount of time that transpires between when data becomes visible and an organization has the ability to recognize it and act on it. Alerts and workflow delivers the needed information to any device. It automates the information delivery process, allows you to audit and trigger updates, and as I just mentioned a couple moments ago, also potentially giving you the ability to monitor and respond to the content of incoming email messages. If you've got generic email accounts like info@sales@support@yourorganization.com, that's a great use to use alerts and workflow to monitor and respond to those emails. What makes Sage Alerts and Workflow and Operational Business Intelligence unique? Number one, it's less than 1/10 the price of a strategic or traditional business intelligence tool. Number two, it's typically installed and up and running in less than 1 day. Typically half a day is the average implementation time to get Alerts and Workflow up and running. You don't have to train your end users in it because they're not using it. They're going to be the recipient of alerts and workflow and the recipient of reports, etc. It's a set it and forget it application. And perhaps the most important statistic of all that I can share with you. And I do need to update this slide because it says there are over 10,000 customers using alerts and workflow. In fact, we're now over 12,000 customers using alerts and workflow. Our support staff receives an average of 7.8 incoming support tickets a day. Again, fewer than 8 incoming tickets over 12,000 customers worldwide. What that really speaks to is the fact that this application really is set it and forget it. It really is that smoke detector. Most of our clients we don't hear from but once a year when they renew their annual maintenance and support. And the technology has been the recipient of numerous awards and commendations, which I won't bore you with. I do, however, like the very last one, Forbes, because I think they do, in fact, know a thing or two about business, and they awarded Alerts and Workflow their Technology Award for Top Productivity Enhancing Tool. I'm actually going to skip through these examples because I do want to leave time at the end for any questions that come up. We do have case studies and ROI calculators that are available for use with Alerts and Workflow. I'm just going to take a moment to talk about one particular customer, Toyo Inc. They're a multinational manufacturer of ink for printing presses. They were having problems, especially in the area of receivables. They were having to write off a lot of bad debt. Their DSO, days sales outstanding, was very high. It took a long time for their customers to pay for their purchases. They implemented Alerts and Workflow to automate all of their form and document delivery, all of their customer communications. Once they reached 6 months of use of Alerts and Workflow, they informed us that they had already sent out over 20,000 alert messages from Alerts and Workflow. I laugh because when I saw that, I kind of swallowed twice and emailed them back and said, did you mean to send out all of those alerts? And they assured me that, yep, they sure did. And they then shared with us their return on investment stats. Over 100 staff work hours saved every month by automating procedures that used to be done manually. Their AR collections went up substantially. Their AR writing off of bad debt went down substantially. And they gave us the very kind quote, Alerts and Workflow does the work of 1 to 2 full-time staff members. So, as you're pondering this concept of becoming more data-driven and Alerts and Workflow, I just want to share with you some questions that you can ask yourself to gauge whether your organization could benefit from Alerts and Workflow. Number one, do you have a lot of date-sensitive data? Think about Sage 300, due dates, deliver dates, promise dates, discount dates, expiration dates. It's helpful to know when those dates are upcoming, when they're here, and when they're surpassed by more than X or Y days. Do you have critical thresholds? You know, it's all well and good to know when a customer has exceeded their credit limit. Personally, I like to know when a customer reaches 80, 85, and 90% of their credit limit. One of my favorite uses for Alerts and Workflow, and something that most folks don't think of, because whenever we think of alerts, we tend to think of alerts based upon something that has happened. And I like to make the case that alerts based upon something that should have happened but didn't are equally valuable. If you have customers who typically buy from you every month and now all of a sudden 3 or 4 weeks has gone by and you haven't received an order from a customer, absolutely, that should be transmitted, that should be relayed, that should be communicated to the corresponding customer's account manager. Do you use exception management? I always like to ask organizations, if I were to open up your top center desk drawer, would I find at least one highlighter pen there? Because if I do, that means that you're using old technology for exception management. You know, if someone puts a report on your desk and you go through it 1 page at a time using your yellow highlighter pen, that's old tech. You know what exceptions you want to look for. Therefore, the process of detecting and responding to those exceptions should be automated. Do you, as an organization, rely upon trend analysis? Do you need to know when critical business information in Sage 300 has been changed? And last but not least, do you have a number of manual processes like invoicing and statement delivery and purchase order generation that could and should be automated? I do encourage you to visit the Alerts and Workflow website. The URL is simply Alerts and Workflow. All together, all one word, alertsandworkflow.com. On that page, you'll see a link that says, does your organization need Alerts and Workflow? Click here to find out. That'll bring you into this free needs assessment tool. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes to go through this tool from start to finish. It's free. You can go through it at your own leisure. No one else is involved but yourself. You can even take it multiple times if you wish. This tool asks you questions about the business processes within your organization. It asks you to identify and prioritize how important those processes are, and it asks you how automated are those processes currently. Based upon your answers, the needs assessment creates this report card that you see in front of you, showing you for what Alerts and Workflow can do for an organization, how much your organization could benefit from those abilities. And so with that, that brings me to the end of this presentation. Hope you found it valuable. You can see there's some contact details on the slide in front of you for my colleague Sean if you do want to follow up with Alerts and Workflow or on the subject of Alerts and Workflow. You can actually download and try out the live shipping Alerts and Workflow technology from our website. It's a live shipping software. Absolutely nothing is disabled. You have 30 days in which to try it out. You have free access to our tech support department. So we absolutely encourage you to do so. And as I did promise to leave time for any questions that came up, let me now turn the proceedings back over to Sean and see if we've received any questions.
Thanks very much, Don. Yeah, we have a couple questions here. You more or less answered one. On average, how long does it take to implement Alerts and Workflow? I believe you answered that about 5 minutes ago.
I did, Sean, and I'd just like to expand upon that. I mentioned that the average is about half a day, 4 hours or so, but I do like to put a little verbal asterisk after that because, as you can see, Alerts and Workflow can do so much. Alerts and reporting and form and document delivery and updating information in Sage 300. When I give that half day, 4 hours estimate, I like to also add that that's assuming that a person is going to start out by using Alerts and Workflow to monitor certain conditions and trigger alerts, typically via email, but also potentially via web dashboard or other method. Yes, Alerts and Workflow can do other things. It can update information in Sage 300. It can generate and deliver reports and charts and graphs. But I always like to say, let's walk before we run. My recommendation to all customers is start out by using Alerts and Workflow to monitor for a handful of conditions, maybe 5 or 6 different conditions, and trigger alerts to the appropriate people. Setting up that initial configuration in Alerts and Workflow will take roughly half a day worth of time.
Okay, I have another question that came in. What happens if an alert fails to reach the person it's sent to?
Right. That's a very forward-thinking question. So the person who asked it, you're absolutely right. Sometimes, and we experience it ourselves every day when we go to send an email and we'll get an email bounce back. We'll have an invalid email address. We'll type an email wrong. We'll forget to put in an @ in a person's address. So Alerts and Workflow actually can determine whether or not an alert has been successfully delivered. So if it fails to do so, there are a couple of things. Number one, Alerts and Workflow can actually notify you. It will watch over the alerts that it sends, and if an alert fails to get delivered successfully, Alerts and Workflow will recognize it. It actually has a set of events that allow it, Alerts and Workflow, to monitor itself. We call it the Watchdog event pack. It's free. It comes with Alerts and Workflow. But if an alert fails to reach its intended recipient, Alerts and Workflow will track it, see it, notify people about it. If it's a temporary kind of error, like perhaps an email server being down or a gateway being unavailable, Alerts and Workflow will automatically re-queue the alert and try to resend it. And even Alerts and Workflow gives you the option of asking a recipient to acknowledge receipt of a delivered message. So I'm glad someone asked that, because that's actually a fairly big part of what Alerts and Workflow can do, actually monitoring the status of delivered alerts and allowing you to specify whether or not an alert recipient needs to acknowledge receipt of that message.
Okay, perfect. And another question is just coming in now. Can Alerts and Workflow call a web service, such as updating one of my non-Sage applications?
Yes. So the answer to that question is an enthusiastic yes, with a little asterisk at the bottom. The version of Alerts and Workflow that I just demonstrated for you is version 9. And in version 9, it does not have a web service API. We recognize that as an absolute need, and so in our version 10 product, we were sure to build in a RESTful web API. So in our version 10 product, the answer is most assuredly yes, it does have the ability to call web services. And just a couple final notes about that. The version 10 product is currently in beta test, so it's actually quite close to a general release, just a couple of months away. The version 10 release not only includes the support for web services, and by the way, that web service support in version 10 is what we call a bidirectional web service API. And what I mean by that is that in version 10, you can not only call a web service to write data back into a database, but you can also have Alerts and Workflow use a web service as the determining factor whether or not an event or business conditions have been met. So just as the simplest of examples, you could set up Alerts and Workflow to look for the addition of certain articles in, let's say, the New York Times. And if articles that meet your certain criteria are added, that web service in Alerts and Workflow can recognize it, it can trigger the corresponding event and deliver those articles to you. So bidirectional web service support being used not only to update information within applications, but also as the means to trigger events in Alerts and Workflow. And I just also wanted to mention in version 10, we've also added a pure web-based user interface to the application. So we'll be supporting both a Windows UI and a web UI. And very importantly, everyone who currently owns version 9 of Alerts and Workflow, as long as you're current on your maintenance and support, you automatically get version 10 at no additional cost, and all of your existing events, all of your existing configuration settings are all automatically migrated to the version 10 solution and new architecture.
Okay, thanks, Don. I think that's it for questions. Does anybody else have any questions before we end this? It doesn't look like any more are coming in. So, as I mentioned, Don, thank you very much. Everybody who attended, we appreciate it. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. My contact information's up there, and I know most of you is on there anyway. So everybody have a great afternoon and a great day.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Take care.